Whether you're a parent navigating myofunctional disorders or simply curious about optimizing your family's overall health, the Myohacker Podcast is your guide. Hi, I'm Karindy and Dr, a speech-language pathologist, myofunctional therapist, and a mom on a mission to bring holistic health to you and your family. Together, we'll explore whole-body connections and integrative solutions. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review to help other families discover this important information. Visit myohackerslp.com for free resources and guides. Quick disclaimer. The content shared in this podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast or its affiliates. This podcast does not provide medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a professional regarding your circumstances. By listening, you agree that the host and podcast are not responsible for any actions you may take based on the information provided. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Myohacker Podcast. With us today is Dr. Chloe Weber. She is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine and the creator of radicalrootsherbs.com, radicalremedy.org, and noxiherbs.com. Dr. Chloe began her journey into holistic health while battling cutaneous leishmaniasis, but her commitment to integrative healing reached new heights when her son Remy was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder and intractable epilepsy. Determined to improve his quality of life, she developed Remy's Revenge, an innovative blend of Chinese herbs and full-spectrum hemp that offers renewed hope for children facing neurodevelopmental challenges and seizures. Building on that success, Chloe co-founded Radical Roots to explore the synergy of Chinese medicine and hemp in addressing today's health concerns. She also launched Noxi Herbs, a women's health line focused on proactive herbal-based solutions. Through all her endeavors, Chloe remains a tireless advocate for children with special needs and chronic health conditions, as well as the brave mothers who support them. You all are going to enjoy this amazing discussion that I had with Dr. Weber. We just recorded it, and I wanted to jump on and say that she has generously created a code for you all to get 20% off radicalrootsherbs.com or noxiherbs.com. You can just use the code Myohacker, MYOHACKER, for 20% off. She also offers an incredible discount if your family has special needs. If you have a child with chronic health conditions and special needs, please email her and let her know, because she will offer you 40% off, which I just love. That just shows you her heart. So if you were on the fence, you're like, I don't know if this is for me, it is. Okay. If you know someone in your life who has a chronic health condition or a neurodevelopmental concern, please listen to what we talk about. I also want to just say, you should listen to the whole interview. We covered so many fantastic topics that were just beautiful, including endometriosis. I just recommend listen to the whole thing, because you might be like, oh, I needed that for this person in my life. And if you just listen, a couple seconds more, you might get a life-changing tidbit. So without further ado, let's have this amazing discussion. We are going to have so much fun on this conversation with Dr. Chloe Weber today. As you already heard in the introduction, she has a background as a mom and then as an incredibly trained individual, business owner. Like, she's changing lives left and right. And so I want us to talk right now. We're going to dive right in to the formula that I first fell in love with, which is called Remy's Revenge. And I would love for you to share a little bit about why you made that, how you developed it clinically, because I have seen it change my patients' behaviors, seizure patterns, sleep quality, all of these things. So please dive into that and let's talk about it.
Gladly. Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. It's so exciting to finally get to nerd out with you. When it comes to Remy's Revenge, so I started Radical Roots and created the formula Remy's Revenge for my son, Remy, who has a rare genetic disorder called STXBP1. which causes all sorts of neurological havoc and multiple disabilities. And the most difficult aspect of his disorder is intractable epilepsy. So anybody who has a child who has epilepsy knows just how devastating that diagnosis can be and how terrifying it is to watch your child go through seizure after seizure and going to doctors and getting meds.
How old was he?
He was 2.5 when he was diagnosed. He's 10.5 now.
Okay.
So, most of these seizure meds not only do not work, but they're addictive, and then they cause other developmental delays and issues. So it's sort of robbing Paul to pay Peter, if you will, down the line when it comes to these farms. So as a doctor of Chinese medicine, my focus has always been on Chinese herbal medicine. I truly believe that it is the safest and most effective medical system in the entire world. They're basically customizable pharmaceuticals. And so in Chinese medicine, epilepsy is what we call a wind disorder. So we often use environmental terms to describe the physiological actions of what's going on with the body. So we look at epilepsy, any sort of neurological disorder, anything where there's a tic or a tremor. So think Parkinson's, MS, epilepsy, Tourette's, even some people with OCD. Those are often considered wind disorders in Chinese medicine. So after having such an intricate time watching my child seize for, honestly, probably over a year of his life of cluster seizures at this point, I got to understand seizures very deeply from an energetic level. And so in Chinese medicine, there are a couple of different ways that wind can manifest. So first, it can come from deficiency. So that's normally a deficiency of kidney yin that can lead to wind and heat. So the kidneys are in charge of our vital energy that we're born with. So some of these kiddos are born with just a lower vital energy force. So that can be a little bit deficient. Another thing that can cause wind is liver qi stagnation. So that really has to do with stress and our ability to process emotions, right? And we also see that leading to heat that's harassing the heart and raising to the head. So often you'll see kiddos who have seizures will have a big ring of sweat around their head when they're sleeping, right? And that's a lot of times you're going to see those seizures presenting at nighttime as well.
Okay, this is... Wait, can I pause right here? Because this is a huge overlap in the airway space, because we will see kids that have disrupted patterns with their breathing at night who have this, like their nervous system is just so out of regulation and they are clenching and grinding, but they're super sweaty at night, not during the day, but as they are sleeping. So I just want everyone to have that mindset a little bit of look at these two. It's not an either or, there's an absolute overlap. And I want us to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, and fundamentally, if they're not getting enough oxygen at nighttime, their body's going into fight or flight, right? So with our formula, what's amazing with Chinese herbs is that we combine herbs together to create dynamic formulas that address not only the symptoms that are presenting, so in this case, seizures, but also the underlying patterns of disharmony. So when I wrote Remy's Revenge, we're nourishing the kidneys, we're clearing the heat, we're moving the qi and blood, and we're calming the spirit. And then, so we have these dynamic Chinese herbs in there, and then we combine it with full spectrum hemp, and we use a crazy alchemical spagyric extraction to make sure that they're incredibly biodynamic, really easily absorbed, and super effective. So it's been really fun. Remy's Revenge has been, I think it's my most brilliant formula, to be honest. It feels like it was something that really came through me as opposed to from me. And I do give out the raw formula to anybody who wants it. So if somebody can't use CBD because they're on too many pharmaceuticals, you're always welcome to email me and I can send you the formula. You can buy it from various different Chinese herbal formulas and make your own tincture. I do not gatekeep that formula in particular at all.
You're incredible. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for, like I said, the lives that you touch with that formula. And just even, I will say, someone doesn't have to have a seizure disorder to benefit from it. I've just seen dysregulation of the nervous system benefit from it. And so talk about how that formula is going to be different from, say, I have it right here. Which one is this one? The Rest and Relax, which also helps with sleep. I mean, so can we talk about that and these formulas and how they're different in their nuanced applications?
Totally. Well, so With Remy's Revenge, fundamentally, you have energy rising to the head, right? So you have too much energy in the head. And so really what we're trying to do is we're going to anchor that into the body. So that's one of the main actions of Remy's Revenge. So I often, if I have a patient with intractable insomnia, Remy's can be a great one because it's just bringing that energy down into their body.
That is so good to know.
Mm-hmm. Can be great for panic attacks for people. Rest and relax, on the other hand, is more of what we call a Shen tonic. So I like to think of it as a big hug for your heart. So it's the Shen in Chinese medicine is really our spirit. So it's just really calming the spirit. So it's generally, I mean, that one's our bestseller by far. It's great for generalized anxiety. It's great for insomnia. I have people every week emailing if they can just like drink a whole bottle of it. And I'm like, well, that would be expensive, but you'll probably sleep well. But yeah, so they're both calming. They both have full spectrum, like therapeutic amounts of full spectrum hemp in them, as do almost all of our formulas. But one is more for the heart and calming the spirit. So like a lot of times people will email and they'll have kids who are on the spectrum, let's say. And so they're trying to figure out which formula is right for them. So I often try and encourage the patients to look at, or the parents to look at whether their kids' hyperactivity or neurological dysfunction is more connected to a level of anxiety and unrest within their heart, or whether it just sort of seems to be more neurological havoc. And either way, it's totally safe to try one and then try the other one and see how it goes, because sometimes it's hard to tell which one might be the right one for your kiddo or your patients. But both are great for calming the mind.
So for pandas, would you recommend Remy's Revenge over the Rest and Relax?
Yeah, typically. Because that's really a lot of neurological instability, unfortunately. I also really love for pans and pandas, just a shout out to my homies over at Wizard Sciences. Ian Mitchell is just an absolute genius, and his NeuroRx is a phenomenal formula for pans and pandas as well. But the two of those together work really, really well.
So it's so funny you say that about like parents trying to figure out like which one, to kind of go with, because I'll have my two boys who people who have met them will be like, oh, they're very active, but they're very different. And I actually will have them choose. I'll be like, which one? And my older son, he tends to prefer the Rest and Relax. My younger son, he likes Remy's Revenge, or he likes just the complete spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do like for kids to have that authority over their own, like that ownership of how they are feeling, because I think sometimes they can't articulate exactly what they're feeling, but they will know what is actually going to help them better than even our best guess. So I'm not saying everybody buy all of the formulas, but you might find it's going to be a little bit of going back and forth, but give them that autonomy to have say in it.
Well, so I love that so much. So I'm sure most people listening to this have heard of at least the telepathy tapes that have just come out, where there's these researchers who are showing that nonverbal kids with autism are fully telepathic, right? And so everybody and their mother has sent them to me. I haven't listened to them yet. I'm so stoked to do that at some point. But my response to all of those texts is that, obviously, like Remy has been reading people's energy and minds his entire life. So for context, Remy is fully disabled, fully nonverbal, and, particularly the first 2 years of his life, I would be taking him from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor. He wasn't diagnosed till he was 2.5. It's a single point mutation, genetic mutation that he has. So when we started going to doctors, he would either look down and ignore the doctor, or he would use his fat little baby hand and cup their faces. And so very early on, I started listening to him and saying, okay, like, you didn't want to engage with this doctor. We're not going back to this doctor. And it worked very well for us. I feel like he's much more intuitive than me, since I have all these layers of conditioning from society built into my ability to read energy of people. And he just clearly reads people's energy. So I think it's really cool. I think kids are incredibly intuitive. So I highly encourage that as well. And just as a side note, anybody who has a kid with disabilities, Radical gives 40% off to you and to your entire family, because we also need to support the mamas and the dads who are taking care of these kiddos. And I try and make it accessible.
Can we talk about that, about the family dynamic and how important it is? Like you were saying, it's so this child has this need, but there's this impact around that need and around this child. Let's talk about that. How can we help families to not be just so depleted with there's a high load already in parenting, and then we increase the complexity and the demand, and there's already just so much on top of us. And I love that you have actually created a line specifically for mothers, and it matches with the cycle. So let's talk about helping and just supporting families and community, and then how you've actually made formulas specifically for this.
Yeah, I think it's an epidemic, even with neurotypical kids and families with neurotypical kids. Parents are just so depleted. Our society is not structured for the support of the family. We do not have a village. I certainly don't have a village. I don't think anybody has a village, because anybody who's in your village is also just as tapped out as you are, right? And so,
right.
I learned.
And then we add in parents, grandparents, and we have that sandwich generation. So we're taking care of or leaning into the care of the older generation as well, which is beautiful. But we do need to be aware that, again, we have limited resources and energy and capacity, and that is a demand as well. So sorry, keep going.
No, I think that's a very important point. I think it's all very overwhelming at a time that's already very overwhelming. You know, I can say that I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. So when Remy was first diagnosed at 2.5, I went full bore, right? Like even before that, I was studying all night, everything I could do, anything I could get my hands on. Then he got diagnosed. We went to the Family Hope Center, which I love, but I'm cooking him keto food all day, and we're doing hours of different therapies every afternoon. I've got him army crawling down a 15-foot ramp in my living room. I was taking him to Ecuador to a neurohacking Cuban neurologist for a month, twice a year. We did that 6 times. I did everything to get him any sort of inch, right? And I was just like, cool, Western medicine doesn't have an answer. No worries, I got this, right? And then it sort of got to the point where I sort of realized that A, I was obviously burning myself out, and B, I realized that fundamentally the most important thing for Remy was that he has a happy mom and somebody who can be engaged and present with him. And so it has been years of unlearning that hyper drive to do everything to get him every inch, and to just sort of lean into the balance of supporting him while also supporting myself and allowing myself some independence and reclaiming sort of who I am instead of just being Remy's mom, which, don't get me wrong, being Remy's mom is my greatest honor and my greatest challenge, my most beautiful opportunity. I'm so proud and grateful of both of us, but I also think as moms, we often lose ourselves in the journey to supporting our kids. So I think just starting to find small ways to support yourself and find the joy that you once had doing whatever it is, whether it's just getting on a walk for yourself. I always say, like, something is better than nothing. Like, find the small spaces in your day where you can take care of yourself just a little bit. And that little bit really does add up.
That is so huge. Recently, actually, on an episode that was a part of, like, you know, a mom had sent in a question about these issues that were happening with her child, and the, you know, do I do this or that? And like feeling disheartened and up against difficulties as far as determining next treatment option and what to do. And a big part of what I told her was, you actually need, like, this is so demanding on us if we are not in touch with our creativity. For one thing, we're going to get rigid. And we're going to be like, I've got to just survive and make decisions and push forward. And sometimes we need to stop. And it might feel terrifying, like, oh no, we're missing this golden opportunity, or, you know, they're getting older. Or I see that a lot in people. They'll be like, oh no, they're getting older and their airway is changing too quickly. And I just tell people, stop. I want us to catch back up with where we are, feel our bodies, because if we aren't feeling them, we're in this, we are in, like you said, fight or flight, and we aren't even here. And it's so important that we are connecting with our children. More than giving them a perfect airway or perfect neurology is connection.
Yeah. Well, and our kids' nervous systems regulate to ours. So even if you feel like, I don't want to put more stress on moms, but they feel our energy, even if we are masking it or feel like we're masking it well. They're going to pick up on that. And I think there's that hard balance, and everybody goes through a different journey, I see parents with new diagnoses with their kids and heartbroken, and they're going through it. And I totally understand, because I've been there and I've been through all of these stages. And now for me, I'm at the stage of Remy is walking. He's so happy. And if all he wants to do is bubble and watch the Family Feud, he's oddly obsessed with the Family Feud, which is absolutely hysterical to me. But if all he wants to do is bubble and he's happy and he's walking, fine, that's chill. I am at a stage where I just think he's absolute perfection. I really do think he's exactly who he's supposed to be. That doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to do what I can to support him. But I also want to make sure that there's that balance in his life where he's enjoying himself and he's not spending what might be a limited life just fighting for another inch, and so it's different for every family. And I think we all go through different stages of it. And, for me, I think doing, shorter sprints. So trying to do, a month of more intensive work with him over the summer. That's sort of what I learned from Ecuador. It was 2 months a year. If I could do a little bit more of an intensive with him, and then we can just enjoy, that works better for us. But I think every family is different. So you've got to find what works for you, and also respect that sometimes things are going to be really hard, and know that you're going to get through it and you're going to get back up again. Because it is, I said this on TikTok and then I took it down because I felt like it was too dark. Especially it's parenting, especially as a single mom of a child with multiple disabilities, is running a marathon uphill. But the only way the marathon ends is if one of you dies. So that's nice and morbid for everybody. But it is actually a pretty appropriate analogy. Yeah. Because he just keeps getting bigger and I keep getting older. So it just gets somewhat harder with age as time goes on. So it's important to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because this is a marathon, however you want to look at it.
Absolutely. And I think, we are putting so much out, but I also think there's so much you just shared about what do you think is our opportunity to learn from these kids right now that maybe we're glazing over?
Yeah. Remy is my greatest teacher by far. He teaches me so much every day about being present and finding the joy in little things. I think all of these kids are perfect. And I know that so many kids have really severe challenges that cause them to suffer with a lot of pain and discomfort. And so my heart goes out particularly to those parents, because Remy has gone through phases of that, whether it's with his seizures or whether, as I was telling you, we had mold, radon, and carbon monoxide poisoning in our house, which caused him to have a really, really hard time. But I think, I think if we can look at their actions and learn from their interests, and I'm a big fan of floor time therapy, so following their interests, expanding on the things that make them shine and lean in, and also looking at the adverse behavior and trying to understand where that's actually rooted will be really helpful for a lot of parents, because there's something underneath that. And if you can find out what that is and support that need, then the kids are going to be much more comfortable, and you guys are going to have a better time for all of you, for the whole family.
Yes. Oh, so good. So I'm going to have us pivot real quick to something that I was talking to you about before we started recording, which is just nerdy knowledge, but it's tied in. Okay, guys. So come with us here as we talk about the tongue and stagnation. So let's talk about what you look for from your background when you see the tongue, because it's so different from how a lot of my listeners, whether it's providers or parents, may be looking at the tongue.
So the tongue in Chinese medicine is a very important diagnostic tool for us. And so I encourage anybody listening to just Google tongue diagnosis chart in Chinese medicine. And you can start assessing what's going on with your tongue and your child's tongue. And you'll see interesting things on the kiddos' tongues for sure. I've been noticing that Remy's got a bit of a heart crack, which is not surprising for a kiddo with a seizure disorder.
Wait, tell me why. You can't just drop that. Tell me why. Why is it not as surprising with a kiddo with a seizure disorder? I must know.
Well, with the heat rising for the seizures and then probably some level of oxygen deprivation and just stagnation, it's going to impact the heart and the spirit quite a bit. So if you look at your tongue, right, you look at the shape of the tongue. Is it really fat? Is it thick? Is it pale? Your tongue looks pretty healthy, girl.
I just drank coffee, so now it's a little coffee colored.
I know, mine is very coffee colored. My tongue is pretty messed up. Not messed up. It's pretty classical for an American, but I'll go through what we've got going on here. So basically we're looking at the coating on the tongue. What color is there a coating? What color is the coating? Is it yellow? Is it white? Is it black? Is it, what's going on there, right? Often if you're sick and you're sort of phlegmy, you're going to see a white coat on there. If you're having more heat signs, so like a sore throat, then it might be more yellow, right? So that's an indication in terms of illness, or in terms of you might have like an overgrowth of candida or dysbiosis. In Chinese medicine, we refer to that as phlegm and dampness. So we're looking at the coat, and then we're just looking at the shape of the tongue and the coloring. So a lot of times people might notice a red tip to your tongue. That indicates heart heat. So that's going to be, again, that's a good indication that you might want rest and relax. You might have heart palpitations. You might have insomnia, anxiety, really common in perimenopause and menopause, shockingly. If you have a line down your tongue, that often indicates some sort of stomach disharmony. So a lot of people who have a lot of food allergies, myself included, have a crack down the middle of their tongue. I know you talked about it on one of your podcasts, the teeth marks on the side of your tongue, right? So that's often in our system, that is what we call spleen qi deficiencies. So the spleen in Chinese medicine is in charge of processing both foods and emotions. It's correlated to worrying. A lot of people with spleen qi deficiency will have monkey mind at night, where you get into bed and your mind just won't shut up. They might also have loose stools or alternating constipation, diarrhea, penchant for various allergies. Might have sort of weak muscles or fatigue, and foggy thinking is often connected to that because Chinese medicine was aware.
What about like gallbladder and appendix issues? Do you see that overlap with any of that?
That could overlap with that. That's more going to be likely more redness on the side of your tongue. But it depends how it's presenting.
Because I see a lot of people that don't have gallbladders. So I was just curious.
It's very common. Well, if you don't have a gallbladder, then your digestion is going to be a bit wonky. So it's going to impact your spleen, whether you're looking at it through Western or Eastern medicine. But yeah, those are the main ones you're going to see. And as you mentioned, if you look underneath your tongue, there are some veins down there. If those are really dark, that's an indication of what we call blood stagnation. Mine, guys. So that might indicate that you're more stressed. You might have a little bit of cold in your system, and that probably indicates that you likely have some significant menstrual cramps, or some menstrual irregularities might be showing up that way.
Huh. I actually don't
bleed those. If you were my patient, I would bleed those.
So funny, because when I first found out about this, it was actually, I was at a dinner setting, and Freddie Kimmel, who helps with like Flopresso and doing all of that. So he's doing lymphatic drainage all the time. Like we were all like looking at each other's tongues, and he flipped his under, no stagnation. Like there was none. And it was like, oh, when you do all this lip work, like it, and he does all kinds of biohacking things too, but it was so cool to see, because I was like, come on, like everyone I see, for the most part, has stagnation under their tongues. So you would bleed it. What else would you do?
Well, I would look at a formula. I mean, there's certainly acupressure and acupuncture points that could be used. In terms of Chinese herbs, which is like the easiest thing to recommend for people, my formula flow state is specifically for what we call liver qi stagnation. So the liver in Chinese medicine is involved with the free flow of qi and blood throughout the body. It's deeply correlated to your cycle and deeply connected to stress. So when you get stressed, you have stagnation. And so you want to move the qi and blood. So you can do that through exercise. You can do that through various different means. With Chinese herbs, it's a very simple way to do it that you can add to these other modalities. But so my formula flow state is based off of a classical Chinese herbal formula called Free and Easy Wanderer, or Xiaoyaosang. And it's been used for hundreds of years to help alleviate stress. It has very powerful anxiolytic properties. It moves the qi and blood, and then it also supports.
Wait, can you say that again? What was that word? Anxiety. Sorry, I'm like, anxiolytic. Took me a second. I got there. Okay, so like anxiety properties. Okay.
Yeah, so it helps.
This is where you can see she's a doctor, guys.
It's interesting because it's used to help. It's been classically used to help alleviate stress and regulate women's cycles. But my friend Drew Pearson, I don't know if you know him, Dr. Drew, who started 40 years of Zen with Dave, has done a lot of research
works with
on it. And so it increases blood flow to the frontal cortex as well. So we added some herbs in there that help increase blood flow to the brain and also help support BDNF as well, because if we're supporting stress, we might as well support brain flow as well. I probably should have taken some because I'm getting all tongue-tied.
Could someone be, because now I'm thinking about, okay, with the heat rising, but I want more blood flow to my prefrontal cortex for sure. Can people be taking Remy's Revenge as well as Flow State?
So all of my formulas are written to be mixed and matched, right? But so there are elements of Flow State in Remy's Revenge because we're still trying to move the qi and blood in Remy's Revenge, and we're still supporting the spleen because dampness can also lead to wind as well. So those are both facets of the Remy's Revenge formula. Flow State, I would think of more. I go to Flow State when I'm working with women in general. I think Flow State is the number one formula from Radical.
I need to get me some
for women's health. It's great. It's really one of my favorites. You'll love it. I'll send you some. And then with Remy's, so Flow State's also only in capsules. So depending on your kiddo, they probably can't take that. Although we might switch it to being.
Can they are these capsules that they could open up and put into like an applesauce or something, or does it have to be encapsulated all the way down?
Yeah, no. They're in enteric coated capsules, but you can totally open them up and put them into things. It's just a matter of whether your kid will eat them or not. They're just herbs. They're extracted onto organic orange peel. So it's like there's nothing bad in there. There's no fillers. We buy the raw herbs. As I showed you, I've got a full raw pharmacy.
Yes, I had like herb jealousy.
So I'm pretty psycho about the quality and make sure that everything is actually under our control. I feel like a bit of a micromanager, but if I'm selling herbs to other people, and particularly kiddos with special needs, I take that job and that honor pretty seriously. So I make sure that everything is as top notch as humanly possible.
Which is so important because I've heard horror stories from people who went with a cheaper herbal route and later ended up finding that there were like a lot of heavy metals and things in these cheaper herbs. And so even though, yes, it might be a lot less, like there's a reason that it's a lot less. It's not the same product. Like it's not the same thing. I want to share something that has been amazing for me. And honestly, I think it could be for you too. If you've been around for a while, you know I have ADHD, and finding ways to support my focus and mental clarity is non-negotiable. That's why I'm obsessed with Danger Coffee. Unlike regular coffee that sometimes leaves me foggy and jittery, Danger Coffee is tested and proven mold-free. That means no hidden toxins hijacking my brain power. Instead, I get the clean energy boost I need without the crash. But here's the kicker. It's more than just a clean coffee. Danger Coffee is electrolyte rich, which means it supports my adrenal health instead of depleting it. Plus, it's remineralized, which supports cellular function and even the mineral density of our teeth. As a myofunctional therapist, you know I'm always thinking about oral health. Minerals are key to keeping our teeth strong. So, if you're looking for a coffee upgrade, give Danger Coffee a try. And because you're part of the Myohacker community, you can save 10% with the code Myohacker. Just head on over to dangercoffee.com and use the code Myohacker at checkout. Try it out and let me know if you feel the danger edge.
There are so many factors that go into making a high quality product. It's really some of the stuff that's on the market. I mean, particularly being in the CBD world, after that big CBD boom happened a couple of years ago, I mean, the amount of absolutely crap products that are on the market. Like, so just a sample for anybody listening, if you see a product that has like 250 milligrams of CBD and they say that it's full spectrum CBD, odds are is that they are using a very small amount of full spectrum CBD and dumping a bunch of very cheap isolate into that. And so why that is a problem for me is that these isolates have been shown to be far less effective and to have far more side effects. So there's a seizure medication called Epidiolex, probably saying it wrong, that is basically isolated CBD. And so meta-analysis a couple of years ago came out and showed that it was 6 times less effective. So you had to use 6 times as much to get to the same therapeutic efficacy. And then also had 6 times the amount of both severe and minor side effects. So to me, I'm like, the full spectrum hemp is just so much safer, so much more dynamic. But all these people think that just more is better. So they dump in all of this isolate, and it seems like you're getting a really great deal because you're getting, 2,000 milligrams compared to my 500, but you're getting a crappier product that's not going to be as effective at the end of the day. And so there are a lot of shortcuts. There are a lot of ways that people cut corners in the industry, whether it's with Chinese herbs or whether it's with hemp. And, it's really disturbing because honestly, a lot of these companies just have a lot of money behind them. They have good marketing and they're able to get their herbs out to a lot of people. And either people don't get the results that they're looking for, or they can have serious side effects from it. It can cause liver damage, it can cause heavy metal toxicity. There are a lot of pesticides on a lot of these plants. So for me, we buy it just from this one specific company called Springwind. Every single Chinese herb has a COA. Our hemp is regeneratively grown. And hemp is also a bioaccumulator, which is another thing. So what it does is it sucks up toxins from the earth. So if you're getting hemp that's not cleanly grown, then it's pulling up the toxins from the earth and ending up in your product. Yikes. So it's really scary. Also, if it's done the right way, it's really incredible because our products are literally not only helping heal your body, but heal the planet as well. So it's a very cool thing. And I think it's well worth the money to invest in a high quality product that's doing it right. And there are other ones besides mine out there. Happy to shout out other companies as well. But
guys, I would just say you want
Chloe. The ones that are still alive are few and far between because the hemp industry is nearly impossible to navigate without VC funding and like a lot of support. Like if you see a company that's marketing, they're probably fairly crappy and they're just being run by VC funding and just have the means to market it really well, which is unfortunate. But most of the smaller companies are gone at this point.
It's like such a loss because we have so much potential with this. And so if it's then just not done well, and I mean, we see this across the whole gamut when it comes to holistic medicine, and just you can have somebody that has a big stake in things and they're pushing subpar, treatments or whatever it might be, and it can make everything have a bad name. That's so frustrating. So keep going. Don't give up. Guys, order some right now. As you're thinking about it, just because we want to keep really good quality products around because, I mean, like you said, this is good for the earth. It's good for ourselves. I mean, I see just headaches. Can you talk about why it's so beneficial for headaches?
with headaches, let's get back to the fundamentals of Chinese medicine, because I use headaches a lot as an example as to how we differentiate things. So again, in Western medicine, you see a headache, you get some sort of pain relief from whatever pill. And yes, you can probably take CBD and that will blanket help a headache because it's activating those TRPV1 receptors in the brain. It's alleviating pain. It's reducing inflammation. It's regulating your neurotransmitters. It's affecting the HT1A pathway, which is the same pathway that SSRIs activate. All of these nerdy goodness things, right? But then in Chinese medicine, how I look at it is, so we're looking for the underlying patterns of disharmony within your body. So you have a headache. Where is that headache coming? Is it coming from stress, right? That's liver qi stagnation. Is it coming from digestive harmony? Again, we're looking at the spleen. Is it coming from deficiency? Are you run down? Do you not have enough electrolytes? Have you just been burning the torch at both ends? That's going to be kidney deficiency. So while we can give you herbs that are going to get rid of that headache, what we do with our formulas is we're actually working to balance that underlying disharmony within your body and bring your entire body back to homeostasis. So fundamentally what we're doing is helping you build health over time instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms that are going on, which sometimes a Band-Aid is essential, especially if you have, somebody dealing with migraines or seizures. One thing I also want to add about the Band-Aids and acute things that I think everybody needs to know this, because everybody thinks I'm crazy when I say this. So bringing it back to my homie, Ian Mitchell, Remy. So Remy's formula, Remy's Revenge, has stopped all of his seizures besides his clusters, right? So Remy would cluster for a week every month, about 10 seizures a day for 5 to 7 days in a row. Hell on earth. Any mom who's ever been through this knows. So literally 1 week of every month was just seizures for us. And so I had tried emergency meds, blah, blah, blah. Nothing touched it. The Remy's Revenge didn't touch it. Again, dramatic impacts for him in terms of he has Parkinsonian-like tremors, in terms of his sleep, his mood, his other seizure patterns that he had as well. The clusters would not go anywhere. So I texted. So one time he was having seizures like every 45 minutes to an hour, and I was getting ready to bring him to the hospital, which is something I would absolutely never do unless I was literally scared of losing my child, because these meds just make him worse. We're not going to sleep. We're not going to be able to eat any of the food at the hospital, and it's just going to be horrible. So I texted my friend Ian Mitchell from Wizard Sciences, and he just texts back, would he drink organic lemon juice? And I was like, yeah, bro. I'll drink organic lemon juice. 1 shot of organic lemon juice stops his clusters cold. Like, how? Incredible. So it resets the acid sensing ion channels in the brain. So it also works for cluster migraines. I had an ocular migraine shortly after that, which I'd never had before. And I was like, I'm having a stroke. I have MS. What's happening? And I was like, Chloe, you're a doctor. Use your doctor brain. Figure this out. You did not develop MS.
Harder when it's yourself.
So I was like, all right, let me try a shot of lemon juice and see what happens. Within 5 minutes, my vision came back because I was terrified. I was by myself, alone with Remy, trying to get him ready to get on the school bus. And I'm like, just get him on the bus. You could go to the hospital. So I took a shot of lemon juice and it got rid of it. And so I always tell parents and anybody who has migraines and cluster migraines, it is absolutely worth a shot to literally just try, an ounce of lemon juice, organic lemon juice, and see if it knocks it out. If it does, amazing. If it doesn't, it's lemon juice.
Does it have to have the sour, or can they add sweetening in case their kids won't take it, or does it matter?
It's the sour that resets the ion channels. Okay. But
okay, so guys, it's got to be sour. Just do it. Ugh.
Just do it.
You can do it.
I mean, it seems to like it, again, back to the intuitive nature of kiddos. He had a seizure the other day at school. And so they won't give him lemon juice at school because they claim, I don't know. So I squeezed some into a bottle and I went over and they brought him outside. And I made him drink a little bit of lemon juice and he's been fine ever since. I mean, it's incredible for stopping the clusters, especially for these kiddos with really, really challenging cluster seizures. So again, it's not going to work for all seizure patterns. It's not going to work for all migraines, but highly recommend that everybody give it a try if those are things that you're dealing with, because who knows? I was blown away. I'm still blown away. It's the most insane thing.
You might be able to run me through then. Or I might just go, Ian, what would you do for all of these? So I now see patients that run the entirety, more or less, of the synapse. Like they have calcium channel deficiencies, potassium channel deficiencies, sodium channel deficiencies. Do you have specific things that you recommend in those cases? And they all have seizures. Like, do you have things you would recommend given those features?
I don't. I probably would. I nerd out on some of the chemical pathways and whatnot, but I feel like the further along I go on my path, the less I seem to care about them.
Tell me more. I love this.
So Remy's Chinese medicine diagnosis did not change at all when we got his genetic diagnosis, right? So our system just understands the body and the brain and the dynamic interplay between both in a way that I don't think Western medicine comes close to. So like we look at SSRIs, right? So again, I mentioned that 5-HT1A pathway with SSRIs. We're pumping people through of all these SSRIs, increasing serotonin, but we're not looking at the upstream effects and we're not looking at the downstream effects. We're just trying to see if we can hit this one pathway. And guess what? This pathway is impacted by multiple other pathways, and it's so much more dynamic than Western medicine will really ever understand. So again, the further along I go, the more I'm like, yeah, cool. So you found a pathway that works or doesn't work. Like, what is the person's Chinese medical diagnosis? Because that's going to help me support them better than looking at any one pathway.
Can I just say there's so much more hope in that than a lot of these families will be told your child's never going to blank, blank, blank. You know, like they're told so many negative things because they're like, because that's impossible because of whatever. And I just think of, my last week I interviewed Danielle Mitchell, and, she talks about her son who they were told like basically he would never move. He was just kind of going to be a vegetable. And like from day one, that is not the case at all. And so there's so much to be, just when we can get sort of stuck in a diagnosis, like there's a reason for it. Actually, I would love this. What do you feel like, when is there a reason for a Western medicine diagnosis? If there is one, maybe there isn't, but like, where do you see that fitting in relation to a Chinese medicine diagnosis? Or is it just so we can function socially in a Western nation?
Well, I think in terms of treatment for me, it doesn't make a difference in terms of how I work with my patients, really. I mean, I'm the type of nerdy doctor that's like, ooh, you have a rare genetic disorder? Like, I will love, love learning about these things. I love working with complex cases because that's my life, and I will do that. But at the end of the day, the treatment protocols are really largely based on what I've learned about developmental neurology, overlapping with my knowledge of Chinese medicine. I think the diagnosis can be really helpful in terms of finding community. So like with Remy's rare genetic disorder, we have an entire group of STXBP1 families, and it's amazing to see other kids who do the weird, quirky things that my kiddo does. It can be really incredible to have that community, and I think that alone is worthwhile. I think that there are ways that you can get support from these other families. I think also, unfortunately, in terms of getting the services that you need, having a diagnosis is really helpful. Remy has a full-time aide at school. Remy has, I get paid by Medicaid in Colorado to be his caregiver. Also, amazing program. Highly recommend. If you need to, move to Colorado.
I know people that moved to Colorado because of some of the supports that are actually there.
Yeah, the schools are awful. I could say I hate the schools. I love Remy's parents. I hate the schools. They give him absolutely no therapies. The therapies are pretty much useless. But in terms of supporting me, again, as a single mom with a small business, super helpful to have that extra money. to be able to care for him the way that he deserves and needs without me losing my mind. But yeah, I think the diagnosis is helpful in certain ways. I think certainly, it depends on who you are and what you're looking for. So like with Remy's disorder and with a lot of, my world is more like these rare genetic disorders, obviously. So this is what I'm speaking to in a lot of this, but they're doing a lot of research on how to modify these genes for these kiddos. And they are getting close to starting human trials on genetic modification on kids with Remy's disorder. And they've shown that they're able to reverse Remy's disorder pretty much fully in mice. Yeah. And so that is a fascinating, be terrifying. It's something that I'm massively conflicted about because A, who knows what the downstream effects are, again, of changing that gene and turning it back on. B, I think Remy is absolutely perfect. So I think that modifying his genes sort of fundamentally goes against my belief of Remy being exactly who he's supposed to be. And then C, I worry, Remy's 10 and a half. I really worry about the psychological ramifications for him, from going from, severely disabled to who knows what. I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know how he can navigate that emotionally. And at the same time, I would love to see my kid be able to speak and be able to verbalize what he wants and be able to have every bit of independence that he possibly can. So it's a very interesting time in terms of research. And I think every parent and every family should and will ultimately be able to make that decision for themselves and for what's right for them. Doesn't mean that there won't be other issues that still need to be worked through, but largely there is a lot of research that is absolutely changing the game that's coming out soon.
Amazing. I had not heard about that. I would actually love if you can just send me that because it's, I always am reaching out to geneticists and I never get responses back because I always want to know different things, like what we're working with as far as, let's say they need to go under anesthesia or not, like this can make a difference in regards to like what I do. I'm like, is a tongue tie worth it? Or a tongue tie release worth it if we have some of these other factors at play? So I always like to, confer with different doctors and physicians on this. So it's, all of that I like to know.
I haven't seen geneticists actually have much interest in the kids. I think they find the mutated gene and at best wish you well. I can tell you that I did not have a good experience with my geneticist for Remy. So I don't think highly of them per se as a practitioner. I'm sure there are some good ones out there, but most of them don't seem to even understand epigenetics, let alone like how we can appropriately support our kids or what's going on underneath or the other, compounding issues that you find from these diagnoses. Like for you and me, we know that, likely we're going to see mitochondrial dysfunction to whatever level, whether it comes up on the testing or not. We're going to see some sort of oral motor issues, some sort of breathing issues, sleep disharmony. We know that all these things come along with these, but largely I don't see geneticists as being that interested beyond finding the diagnosis and moving forward. And maybe that's my bias from, I forget his name.
Guys, prove us wrong. If you know a great geneticist, please put us in contact with them. We want to be, please send them our way. I want to, before we wrap up, I would love to hear your thoughts on, because, obviously a lot of the people, well, maybe not obviously, but a lot of the people listening are here because their children have airway issues, which often come about through unawareness of tonsils and adenoids being enlarged. Their child isn't sleeping well at night, or maybe they have asthma, they have allergies, they have congestion. What are your bag of tricks, your formulas, your recommendations for families as they have these issues? Because yes, we can get them removed, but as I'm sure you'll talk about, that doesn't take care of the root issue. And sometimes it just covers what is still going on, but now they might not have those the pieces, the tissues that helped them actually navigate their response?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked this question, and it's sort of funny. So Remy has never slept well, and we did a sleep study when he was like 3 or 4, and he had obstructive apnea. And so at this point, I hadn't slept for 3 to 4 years, not counting pregnancy, which was pregnancy. So I was like, fine, just take out the tonsils and the adenoids. I just need to sleep. Like I'm a single mom. I just can't. I cannot handle this anymore. They took him out, grew back. Everything grew back. Legitimately, you can see them. They're there. So it didn't really change anything. The formula has helped much more. So again, that sort of speaks to
his tonsils grew back?
Yeah.
Because adenoids grow back, but tonsils don't usually. They must not have completely removed them.
I can send you a picture of them.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Usually, adenoids generally do, but tonsils usually stay away. Whoa.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, again, the body has so much more wisdom than we ever do. That's why I love herbs. Herbs and nature have so much more wisdom than we ever will. And so we combine the two together and we've got an incredible healing opportunity. But so Remy's tonsils and adenoids grew back, which just shows the wisdom of his body. They knew that they were valuable to him. They wanted him to have it, so he grew them back. Fascinating. Amazing. But really what a lot of these allergies and airway issues, again, come down to the spleen. So digestive disharmony, which is where I recommend that everybody starts no matter what you're dealing with, whether it is an adult with an autoimmune disorder or a kiddo with special needs. You need to start with an elimination diet and find out where any of this inflammation and phlegm and dampness is coming from. Because if you're feeding those bad bacteria, you're increasing inflammation in your gut, you're going to end up with leaky gut, and that's going to cause immunological havoc within your body and ultimately your brain. So really starting with an elimination diet, finding foods that are really supportive to the gut, maybe start making your own probiotics, start feeding your kids foods that are going to build their health. And I know it can be really hard with some kiddos who are super picky, but it's something that you really need to start working on and be very diligent about. And if you're doing that with your kiddos, that also means you got to do it for yourself too, because we're building health as moms as well. And if they see you, eating bad food, then it's going to be very hard to get them to eat the things that you're trying to get them to eat. So starting with the gut is really essential in Chinese medicine. That's where all that dampness and phlegm is coming from, which is really dysbiosis. And then, the ramifications of leaky gut. I also love ion biome or beam minerals. Those are really great foundational supplements to support gut health, detoxification, and tighten those tight junctions. Actually, CBD, the amount of research on CBD and gut health is really fascinating. I've done whole podcasts on that as well. So if people want to nerd out on that, you can look up the episode I did with SIBO Made Simple. It was like the first podcast I ever did, but it was all about CBD and gut health. So I might have been a little nervous, but it has a lot of really good data in there.
That's so fascinating. Does it actually help with SIBO? Does it reduce that overgrowth?
It helps with SIBO. It helps increase tight junctions. It helps increase beneficial bacteria in the gut, reduce inflammation in the gut. It helps increase Monocylia acromantia, which is like the hot, this research was all before Akkermansia became like the hot probiotic. But Akkermansia...
But it's so hot right now.
It's such good marketing. How much money you guys got? Guess what? You could get Akkermansia by just increasing your fiber or taking CBD. But so Akkermansia is very interesting because it's researched for a lot of neurological conditions, including MS and epilepsy. So I really, for me, I find it really interesting. And I think that one of the ways that CBD is so effective in helping support with neurological conditions is through its impact on the gut and the vagus nerve. So it's pretty fun.
Oh, cool, guys. Okay, so what was that podcast again? You mentioned, well, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll get it from you.
Yeah, that was SIBO Made Simple. Okay. This woman, Phoebe Lapine, she's great. She's a sweetheart.
Okay, fabulous. Because I see that, I mean, just across the board, if you're going to have inflammation anywhere in the body, generally there's an inflammatory response in the gut that we're seeing, and we're seeing connective tissue that is if it's a little bit on fire or it's not as tight as it should be. We're seeing these issues. Can you speak to, in one more minute, can you speak to tone and CBD and your herbs in regards to how they might influence tone in the body?
So tone, again, comes down to the spleen. So that's really, muscle weakness is connected to the spleen in Chinese medicine. So it really comes down to that nourishment.
Everyone I see, spleen issues. Everybody I see, I just got to say. And it actually wasn't on my radar.
So it's almost always, in our society, often we're going to see either liver or spleen disharmony. But the thing about the liver and the spleen, so you think stress and digestion, right? They're on the same axis in Chinese medicine. We do like a little star. And so the liver and the spleen are dynamically interplaying with each other. So if you're stressed, you're going to see digestive issues. If you have digestive issues, you're going to see more stress and stagnation. So the spleen is really about the nourishment of the body and the mind, and being able to process and absorb the nutrients that you need, as well as the emotions and the traumas and the joy that's coming through your life experience, right? So a lot of these kids are processing complex emotions, whether they're able to verbalize it or not. They're going through a tremendous amount. So it could be more of an energetic taxing of them and their nervous system, or it could be that they have had leaky gut since birth, and they're not able to absorb the supplements and the foods that you're giving them. So fundamentally going back and healing the gut and helping them get the nutrients that they need. I mean, I can tell you for myself, I mean, again, a lot of the things that I've learned have been through my own mistakes. I've probably spent thousands and thousands of dollars on supplements that Remy probably could not absorb when he was younger. I mean, I was giving him every freaking thing that, like I would read research study after research study and be like, oh, he needs this and he needs this. And, the reality is that he probably wasn't able to absorb it at that point because his gut was just in such havoc, even though I had him on a very clean diet since birth. I nursed for like 3 years. I gave him only
good for you,
gluten-free, dairy-free, all the things, but like his gut was a mess. And so, we had to take a step back and really work on healing that so that we could move forward. And to your point before, there's no limitations on these kids. So my goal with Remy is always to love him for exactly who he is today, and also not put any expectations on who he will be tomorrow, but also not put any limitations on that either. So Remy was also not supposed to walk, and, was likely going to have catastrophic epilepsy, multiple seizures a day, la, 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 la. And Remy is a Tasmanian devil. He is all over the place.
Yes.
He is what I lovingly refer to as a smash kid. If he can pick it up, he can throw it and see how loud it is when it falls.
There you go.
So, these kids will continue to amaze you as you just focus on the fundamentals and support them that way and show up and love them for who they are.
Okay. I can't even get a better ending. That was literally the perfect ending, guys. Because I was going to ask, like, what would be your last point to share with families? And that's it. That they will continue to amaze us and astound us, and that we absolutely welcome them here in our lives. And it's so beautiful to have them here showing us such an innate wisdom that we don't have because we are so stuck in our thinking patterns, and sometimes they just blast right through it. So I love that. How can people find you? Where are all the ways that they can follow you and listen to your podcast?
So Radical Roots Herbs is where you get the Chinese herbs and CBD. That is my first baby. Well, Remy's my first baby. Radical is my second. So anybody, again, who has a child with disabilities, if you would like 40% off, just shoot me an email. Any of the emails on the website go to me. You can hit me at Chloe@Radical Roots Herbs or info@Radical Roots Herbs, all going to my phone one way or another. And I don't ask for any sort of certification or whatever. We have enough hoops to jump through as special needs parents. Then I have Noxi herbs, which we were going to talk about, but I diverted. And so I just started a women's line.
Let's talk about it Let's talk about it really quick. Just give me like 2 minutes. Let's talk about Noxi herbs because I do want to talk about it.
Okay, so Noxi, so basically, as I was telling you before, I just see that women and moms in general are just so tapped out. Mental health issues as well as hormonal health issues have been absolutely skyrocketing in women and in moms. And so we're seeing this really beautiful awakening to the importance of women's health in our society. Astounding because we are 50% of the population and we created everybody. So maybe it would be important to look at our health. But so Chinese medicine is just absolutely astounding when it comes to supporting women's health. It's one of my favorite things to do, helping other women get pregnant, helping women deal with endometriosis, perimenopause, menopause. Chinese herbs are so dynamic with it. So I created a modular system which has 4 different formulas. One is primarily focused on the spleen, one is more focused on the liver, one is more focused on the heart, and one is more focused on the kidney, right? And so you take a quiz on the website and it tells you which formulas you want to take at what time of the month. So really fundamentally, your estrogen is rising the first half of your month after you bleed. And in Chinese medicine, you're trying to rebuild your kidney energy as well as your yin and your blood. So you're trying to nourish yourself really those first 2 weeks after your cycle. And then the second 2 weeks, according to Western medicine, the progesterone is rising more while the estrogen is declining. So in that, we're really supporting the liver and potentially the spleen, depending on what you have going on. So for a lot of women with PCOS, I would say do the kidney formula the first half of the month and then the spleen formula for the second half of the month, preparing for your cycle. For most people who are trying to regulate your cycle, if you're in perimenopause or if you're trying to work on fertility, you do the kidney formula, which is nourish, and then regulate, which is the liver formula for the second half. So we're moving the qi and blood so you don't have that stagnation as you're going into your cycle and into bleeding, which really does a great job of alleviating painful menses and just any of those PMS or PMDD symptoms.
Can you talk about endometriosis?
Can I? Endometriosis is, not surprisingly, blood stagnation in Chinese medicine, right? It's a lot of pain. And in Chinese medicine, stagnation leads to pain. So we like warming things, moving things. So a lot of topicals, let's say, those are going to have cooling things in them when you're coming from Western medicine. In Chinese medicine, we're always trying to warm you up. We don't want any of that ice. We want things moving. And so we think that heat does that a lot more. So endometriosis is interesting because there's also a lot of research that's coming out that's showing that endometriosis is associated with a dysregulated endocannabinoid system as well. So I'm giving a presentation tomorrow on the endocannabinoid system and women's health, which I'll send you the link to if you want to come see it.
Yes.
So this research is really fascinating. So what's interesting about CBD and the endocannabinoid system is we make our own endogenous cannabinoids, right? So we make these cannabinoids within our body. And so but they're degraded after we use them. So when we're under chronic stress, we create a state of endocannabinoid deficiency, right? And so that's why these exogenous cannabinoids like CBD, CBN, CBG, these have been such a huge boom because we're all running at this like massively deficient state of these very vital chemicals that help regulate our nervous system, help regulate our immune system, everything. Like it's just incredible. But so what we're seeing in the research is that a lot of these women's issues are also correlated to endocannabinoid deficiency and endocannabinoid system dysregulation. So it'll be interesting seeing how that research shakes out. I would assume that the research, similar to how it played out when it comes to kids with epilepsy, will lean heavily towards the pharmaceutical options and squash the natural options. But the reality is that, small companies like me, I would love to do a research study on that. I don't have the bandwidth or the finances to do something like that, whereas pharmaceutical companies can. Unfortunately, when you look at the data, just time and time again, it shows that the full spectrum hemp is so much safer and more effective. So that's what I always recommend. But yeah, so endometriosis, move the qi and blood. You can do that with my relief remedy from Radical. If you're in pain, that one is really powerful for moving qi and blood and has the cannabinoids in there as well. Or with Noxi herbs, you can do the regulate throughout your cycle, and that should be really helpful as well.
Amazing, because not surprising, I also work with quite a few people who have endometriosis. So we're seeing stagnation, guys. Stress, stagnation, all of these things. All right, so we were wrapping up how people can meet you, how they can find you.
So noxiherbs.com and Noxi, named after the goddess of night, born of chaos. And my podcast is, which is also my dog's name, but he's a boy. But I was like, doesn't matter. His name is Nox, but anyway. And my podcast is Radical Remedy. I've been on hiatus while I have been dealing with the mold, radon, carbon monoxide jamming, but we will be back, and I look forward to having you on there very soon. And I really love doing the podcast, so I would love for anybody listening to come and join. I've had some really incredible guests.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It has been so much fun today, and I know everyone learned so much and felt uplifted and encouraged. So thank you again.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Myohacker Podcast. Remember, small changes can make big impacts on our overall health and well-being. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. This way, more families will learn about this important information and we can make a bigger impact. Head on over to myohackerslp.com for in-depth resources and guides. You can also join me on Instagram at myohackerslp for bonus content and demos. And if you have questions or topic suggestions for future episodes, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, let's biohack myofunctional health as myohackers who change the world through intentional action and connection and breathing. Quick disclaimer reminder, the content shared in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only.